They say a man's home is his castle. But in Ashton Falls, your castle comes with bylaws, fines, and a neighbor named Deb who thinks she's the queen. I moved here for peace, a quiet life, maybe some gardening. What I got instead was a war waged over 6 feet of gravel and a shortcut. No one had the right to take. I tried to reason. I tried to ignore. But when diplomacy fails, sometimes you have to get creative. This isn't just a story about a hedge maze. It's about standing your ground when no one else will. About community control and the absurdity of suburban power plays. And maybe, just maybe, it's about how one well-placed bush can change everything. Welcome to the neighborhood. It started like most bad things do, with the sound of metal meeting something it shouldn't. I hadn't even reached my first cup of coffee when the screech of tires and the crunch of bumper on brick ripped through the morning calm. My dog Atlas yelped and bolted under the table. I grabbed my robe and rushed to the front porch. There she was, Deb Lanning, standing next to her pearl-white Lexus SUV, which now sat awkwardly on my lawn, its bumper crushing the flower bed I'd planted with my late mother. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't even checking the damage. She stood there, arms folded, sunglasses pushed up onto her forehead, lips pursed like I'd insulted her ancestors. "You've got to be kidding me, Ethan," she barked, pointing toward the wooden fence I'd installed the day before. "You blocked the shortcut," I blinked. "You crashed into my yard. This has been the through lane for years," she snapped. "You can't just close it. This is my driveway," I replied evenly, fighting to stay calm. "It's not a community road, Deb." She rolled her eyes. "The HOA allows it. I've lived here 22 years. You what, 13 months." She took a step closer. "Then, let me give you some advice. People around here expect things to stay the way they've always been. We don't take kindly to change." I stared at her. This woman had used my private drive as her personal shortcut for over a year, ripping up my gravel, scaring my dog, tearing across my lawn without a second thought. Every time I tried to stop her, she found a way around it. Cones knocked over, signs ripped out. The tiny wooden gate I installed, she drove straight through it. And now she was lecturing me about tradition. That afternoon, the HOA sent an email, a formal violation notice. Not for her. Of course not for me. Apparently, my unauthorized fence was a disruption to established neighborhood traffic patterns. I read the email 3 times, trying to make sense of it. I even called the number listed. A board-sounding clerk confirmed that yes, the board had received multiple complaints, and yes, the vote had passed. I had 1 week to remove the fence, or face daily fines. I asked for the name of the complainant. She wouldn't give it. I didn't need her to. I marched down to the HOA office that same evening. Inside, Deb was already there, seated comfortably on one of the leather chairs, chatting with a few board members, like she was the queen of Ashton Falls. When I stepped in, her smile tightened like a rope being pulled too hard. "Mr. Reyes," said the HOA president, glancing at my file. "We were just discussing your landscaping choices." "You mean the fence? I built on my own land to keep someone from illegally using my driveway?" A few exchanged looks. One board member cleared his throat. "It's just that, well, that route has been used for a long time. It's kind of an informal easement. There's nothing in the town records about that. It's a matter of community flow." I leaned in, voice flat. "So you're siding with the person who drove over my lawn on purpose because it's inconvenient for her to drive around the block?" Deb gave a soft laugh. "Let's not get dramatic. It's just a fence. People are creatures of habit, Ethan. You can't expect us to reorganize the entire neighborhood just because you've decided to be stubborn." "No," I said, my voice firm. "I expect you to respect property rights. I bought this land. I pay taxes on it. You don't get to rewrite geography because..." Deb likes shortcuts. Deb's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're not going to win this. We've got legal precedent, bylaws, community support. You're new. You don't get how things work around here." I looked around at the board. No one met my eyes. And that was when I knew. This wasn't just about a fence or a driveway. It was about control. She wanted to break me early, show me that I had no power here. The HOA wasn't about community. It was about compliance. And Deb, she was the enforcer. Well, I wasn't going to bend. That night I sat on my porch long after the sun had gone down, staring at the broken petals of my mother's irises, trampled beneath Deb's bumper. I thought about all the veterans I'd served with, who fought for the idea that private property was sacred. I pulled out an old notebook, sketches, concepts, traps. Not literal ones, mental ones, puzzles. I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to confuse her, frustrate her, and make her question every step she took on my land. Because she'd drawn the first line in the dirt. Now it was my turn. By Monday morning, the contractors had arrived. No, not demolition crews sent by the HOA like Deb had probably dreamed up in her sleep. These guys were on my payroll. 2 trucks, a trailer full of plants, and one very intrigued landscape designer named Miles, who had agreed to take on the most unconventional job of his career, so he said, stepping onto my porch and eyeing the layout I'd drawn in chalk on the concrete. "You want me to build a hedge maze in your driveway?" "That's right, a real maze with twists, dead ends." "Exactly." Miles grinned like a kid in a candy store. "That's the most beautifully petty thing I've ever heard." "Good," I said. "I want it legal. I want it dense, and I want it fast." He nodded. "I've got just the thing. Boxwood. Hybrids, thick, evergreen, fast-growing, low maintenance. Once it fills in, it'll be damn near impenetrable." Perfect. Over the next 5 days, my front yard transformed. Paths were dug, soil-tilled, hedges planted. From the road, it looked like a landscaping project, gone wild. But from above, using the drone I'd borrowed from my buddy Todd, the pattern was clear, a true maze. A real one. Dozens of false exits, circular paths. A center you couldn't reach without strategy. I had no plans to explain it to the HOA. Let them guess. Let Deb wander on day 6. I added the cherry on top, a small wooden archway over the entrance with a carved sign that read, "Private property shortcut closed. Proceed at your own risk." The next morning, I didn't have to wait long. At 7:52 a.m., just as I was sipping the first sip of my coffee, Deb's Lexus rolled to a stop in front of the hedge line. She sat there for a moment, confused. From the street, the hedges appeared decorative, almost inviting. She pulled forward, slow at first, then committed. Tires crunched on gravel. I leaned against the porch post, watching. She took the first turn, then the second. Then I lost sight of her. The silence that followed was glorious. 5 whole minutes of stillness, punctuated only by the distant sound of tires adjusting, reversing. Then came the horn. One loud, frustrated honk. I stifled a grin. Atlas curled by my feet, perked his ears. 3 more minutes. Then out of nowhere, Deb's car burst back through the maze from a completely different exit, back onto the same street she'd started on. Her face, barely visible through the windshield, was red with fury. Her mouth was moving, likely cursing in a way only middle-aged HOA presidents could. Then she floored it. The Lexus, shrieking down the block. I walked out to the edge of the maze, pretending to inspect a hedge. My phone vibrated in my pocket. "Unknown number," I answered. "Mr. Reyes," came the voice. Tight, sharp, passive-aggressive to the bone. "This is Deborah Lanning, representing the Ashton Falls Homeowners Association." Deb Lovely. Surprise. "What can I do for you?" "You know damn well what this is about. I'm sorry. You'll have to be more specific. That thing you've constructed." "It's a clear act of aggression. You are intentionally obstructing a common route used by dozens of residents, which is on my property." "You think this is clever?" "Extremely." She sucked in a breath. "You're going to regret this." I hung up before I could say something I'd actually regret. But the next part surprised even me. By that evening, I had 12 emails from other residents. Some of them were complaints, expected, but 8. 8 of them thanked me for standing up, for pushing back, for doing what nobody else had dared do. Turns out Deb's shortcut wasn't just through my property. She had a history of boundary testing. One neighbor said she regularly moved his garbage bins for aesthetics. Another said she tried to force him to repaint his shutters from off-white to approved beige. By Thursday, A new message appeared in the community chat thread, anonymous. Can someone build a maze in front of Deb's house? Next. The replies rolled in dozens of laughing emojis, private DMs. Even one from the HOA vice president who wrote, "Don't quote me, but I'm rooting for your hedges." That night I sat under the porch light with Atlas curled at my feet, my coffee still warm in hand. I thought about the ridiculousness of it all. A petty suburban war sparked by a driveway. But somehow, beneath the pettiness, something bigger was happening. I wasn't the only one Deb had tried to bulldoze. Maybe I was just the first one to stand my ground, literally. And the funny thing, the hedge maze, wasn't just keeping her out. It was drawing others in, 3 days after Deb's disastrous hedge maze incident. A formal letter from the Ashton Falls HOA arrived in my mailbox. Notice of non-compliance, obstruction of community access. Inside, a printed copy of the HOA guidelines was stapled to a violation sheet claiming I had created an unauthorized landscape feature that poses risk to community mobility and emergency access. They even highlighted a section that didn't exist. I chuckled. Bold move. But Deb wasn't just bold. She was desperate, and desperate people always overreach. That afternoon, I made the call to someone I'd hoped I wouldn't need. Janelle Ortiz, a property rights attorney in town, with a reputation for bulldozing HOAs. And not metaphorically, I was wondering when you'd call Janelle, said, half amused, half excited. You're the guy with the maze, right? I'm the guy who accidentally triggered a neighborhood uprising. Yes. You're also about to become my favorite case. The next morning, Janelle and I marched into the HOA's office with a folder thick enough to flatten a cat. Deb was already there, perched at the head of the table, like a queen bee defending her hive. 2 other board members sat awkwardly on either side, avoiding eye contact. "Mr. Reyes," Deb said, voice dripping with sugar. "I hope you're here to settle this peacefully." "I am," I said, sliding the folder across the table, "by showing you exactly how every single thing I've done is legal." Janelle leaned in. "And how every fine you've issued violates state property code. Pages 13 through 27. You'll find the citations enlightening." Deb's smile faltered. "Oh, brought a lawyer." Janelle raised an eyebrow. "Did you bring your reading glasses?" For the next 15 minutes, she walked them through the state zoning ordinances, local decorative landscaping laws, and HOA limitations on enforcement outside of shared spaces. The kicker: I had obtained an easement waiver from the original developer, signed in 2009, stating that my driveway could not be claimed as communal property. Checkmate. The room went quiet. Even Deb's usual smirk had melted off her face, like cheap lipstick in July. "We'll need to take this under advisement," one of the board members mumbled. Janelle nodded. "Of course. And in the meantime, I'll be filing a cease and desist against the HOA for harassment and false citation under Civil Code 844. You'll want to get your insurance ready." Deb shot up, knocking her chair backward. "You don't understand," she snapped. "That maze, it's humiliating. It makes us look like a joke." I stood. "No," I said quietly. "You make you look like a joke. The maze." That was me finally saying no. Her nostrils flared. "This isn't over," Janelle smiled. "Oh, it really is." But the real victory wasn't in the conference room. It happened 3 days later. A flyer was slipped under every door in the neighborhood. Emergency vote petition for the immediate removal of Deborah Lanning from the HOA board. The flyer didn't list my name, but everyone knew who had inspired it. By Friday night, 84 households had signed. That was more than enough. Saturday morning, the neighborhood gathered in the Ashton Falls clubhouse. I sat near the back, silent, watching. Deb entered late, her sunglasses large enough to hide most of her face. She sat alone. The vote was swift, the tally brutal. When the result was read, Deborah Lanning removed from HOA presidency by a vote of 82-9. The room didn't cheer. It sighed, like a tension that had gripped the neighborhood for years had finally broken. Outside neighbors I barely knew shook my hand. "About time," someone stood up to her. You turned your property into a protest, and it worked. Even the HOA's new interim president, a retired judge named Ellis Granger, walked up to me and said, "That hedge maze might have been the single greatest act of suburban resistance I've ever witnessed." Later that day, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No name, no return address. Inside, a single note. "You win. I'm moving. Congratulations." I didn't need to read the handwriting to know who it was from. Deb was gone within the week. Her house hit the market the following Monday. Rumor was she was moving to Florida. I just hoped their HOAs were ready. And as for the maze, it stayed. But it wasn't just mine anymore. By Halloween, kids were trick-or-treating through it. A local fifth-grade class asked if they could use it for a scavenger hunt. One family even asked if they could host their daughter's birthday party inside it. That Saturday, as I watched kids laugh and race through the paths once feared by a tyrant, I realized something. What started as a petty act of rebellion had become something else entirely. A symbol, not just of defiance, but of community, of how one person's line in the sand can turn into something others rally behind, and that sometimes the best way to fight back is to plant roots.